Hello, my dear viewers. I'm Olga Demchuk, a researcher of the inner world of personality. Today, with the help of these props, a chair and cushions, we will try to dive into the very depths of our inner world. The topic of today's video is suffering and dissatisfaction. In order to understand where our suffering and dissatisfaction come from and why we are so attached to them, we need to go back to our past. If we imagine that we are infants, lying in a cradle or a stroller, completely helpless, unable to do anything for ourselves, not able to feed ourselves or change our clothes. In fact, they simply can't even manage to get up and leave a place that they really don't like at all. Then it becomes clear that the only possible response to the influence of the outside world is either pleasure or displeasure. In other words, when things don't go the way I want, I feel dissatisfied, and I react to this either with suffering or with anger. When a baby cries, they are complaining, they are expressing their dissatisfaction. The power of a baby's cry helps infants survive because the adult begins to feel guilty and starts to take care of the child. But this infantile reaction stays with us for our entire lives. It's important to understand that there's no need to fight it, to think that you can work through it, or that you can become enlightened. I've had 100 hours of therapy. I no longer have any suffering or dissatisfaction. No, it doesn't work that way. Our suffering and dissatisfaction stay with us forever, and they allow us to understand what we don't like. But often, for many people, this unfortunately becomes the only action that a person is truly capable of taking. Let's remember how we sometimes fall asleep. It's already time to go to bed. We've finished watching the 5th episode of a series, and before falling asleep, we start attacking ourselves for not having read some book again, not having watched some lecture, not having done something useful, but instead spending the time on a TV show. And we're dissatisfied with ourselves. We are both dissatisfied with ourselves and at the same time suffering. We suffer because once again we didn't do what we were supposed to. And if we suffer, if we feel this pain, the pain of not having read the book, then it's as if our complaints against ourselves disappear. We don't attack ourselves then. You didn't read the book again. Yes, it hurts so much. I also really don't like it. I really don't like it. And then you can peacefully fall asleep. Many people deal with their problems this way. First, they attack themselves, then they suffer. When they suffer, the self-aggressive attacks stop and the problem goes away. It's as if you did something about it, as if you actually did something. And then you can peacefully fall asleep, you can go on living as you did before. Suffering and chronic dissatisfaction, this habitual way of relating both to yourself and to others, traps a person in self-absorption, emotional subjectivity, and a painful sense of hopelessness. Suffering and dissatisfaction are like two heavy padlocks hanging on the doors of the prison that keeps you from changing your life. Let's break it down with a very simple example. Let's imagine that I'm a woman whose work is closely connected to the internet. And then, at some point, my internet suddenly crashes. It disappears completely. In that moment, I begin to feel a sense of dissatisfaction. This feeling of dissatisfaction is a signal. When we notice it within ourselves, it usually means that something in our environment isn't going the way we want or expect it to. For example, food, I eat and I don't like it. So dissatisfaction is an important state. We don't fight it. We don't try to be indifferent to everything, to accept and understand everything with all our might. Some people, when practicing spiritual disciplines, reach a state where they completely lose their sense of self and no longer understand who they are at all. So I feel dissatisfied. There's no internet. At that particular moment, when I begin to feel dissatisfied or uneasy, a subtle sense of discontent quietly arises within me. If we imagine for a moment that there is an umbilical cord through which the essential nutrients that bring me satisfaction are supposed to flow, it's almost as if this vital cord suddenly gets cut off. That is, I stop receiving from the outside world the things that I truly need. There is, as a result, a lingering sense of dissatisfaction. And besides dissatisfaction, there is also my desire, my want. This want is something people often overlook, even though it will play the main role in our story. I want the internet to come back. Right now, the more urgently I need the internet to appear, the more pressure I will put on myself. In fact, when I sit here in this particular chair, I find that I have to seat the one individual, the very person whom I will ultimately attack for their inability to get what I truly want. I can even attack the internet. Some people argue with the internet, with the weather, with the climate, with the universe. Some even argue with God. It's almost as if I absolutely have to find a way to punish someone, anyone, simply because things just aren't going the way I want them to go. The internet can be sitting in this chair. It's all because of the internet. Because of the internet, I find that I won't be able to work as I should. Because of the internet, I realize I'll get into trouble. And all of these sufferings, these difficulties, they start to consume me completely, locking me inside my own subjectivity and draining an enormous amount of energy from me. But I'm not an infant anymore. I can already do something about it. An infant who wants to eat but isn't being fed can either suffer because of it or get angry at the object that isn't giving them what they want. You can also get angry and suffer because of the internet. For example, the internet is unstable. I'm not solving this problem. Every time the speed drops, I get angry. Or for instance, I travel to a country where people speak English. Every time I suffer and get angry about not knowing English, but when I arrive, I don't start learning it. Every time I suffer and get angry because I don't understand something, but I don't get to the bottom of it. It's as if my psyche considers suffering and getting angry to be sufficient action. This action is really massive, but it's intense only in my inner world, and in that inner world it seems to count as enough. Let's move on. I call a specialist. I'm not a baby anymore. I've suffered. I've gotten angry. Nothing has changed. Although for a baby it was enough to suffer or get angry, and they would be fed. But I'm an adult now. I understand that that's not enough. I need to take some action. So take that action. At this point, many people freeze up. Of course, dialing the provider's phone number and talking to the operator is easier than, for example, delving into the impossibility of building a relationship or trying to understand why you can't develop your talent and become an outstanding specialist. It's much harder than figuring out why I can't earn the amount of money I need. Dealing with the provider is easier. So I dial the number. The operator speaks to me. I talk to him already as someone who is suffering and angry, dissatisfied. You see how suffering and dissatisfaction seem to us like some kind of opposite actions. But they are inseparable. They go hand in hand. They are together. I am suffering. I don't have internet. Send me help, and preferably as soon as possible. The technician arrives. The technician inspects all of the internet cables in your apartment, carefully checking each one for any visible signs of damage or wear. After completing the inspection, the technician explains, the cable that brings the internet connection into your apartment from the stairwell is damaged, and that's the main reason why your connection has been unstable. At that moment, I am once again suffering and dissatisfied because the problem can't be fixed right away. So I react to this again with suffering or dissatisfaction. I suffer because of this or feel dissatisfied about it, as if in my inner world I have only two cushions, two possible ways to react to what's happening. I might even throw up my hands like this and say, "What a nightmare, what a nightmare." And it seems to me that I'm already communicating with the world, with this emotional outburst, even though it's really just processes happening inside me. I ask when the wire can be replaced. He says, I need to go and check what we have left in stock, for example. He leaves, and I can't seem to wait calmly or patiently because something deep inside me just continues to feel so hungry. It keeps feeling dissatisfied. In other words, there is pressure happening inside me. Give, 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 do it the way I want. Give, 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 give. And if I am not knowledgeable about the inner world, I won't even feel this pressure on myself. I will feel anxiety, discomfort, a bad mood, or something else like that. And because of this pressure, I start to sink into gloominess. But if I start getting angry at the repairman who came, or at the provider I signed the contract with, I immediately relieve myself of the pressure, the aggression, the self-aggression. That is, I can sit in this chair and put pressure on myself with dissatisfaction, telling myself that I can't figure it out, can't fix it, tormenting myself, which is hard. I expend energy, I feel pain. And then, in this place of honor, it will be the repairman or the provider or His Majesty the Internet whom I will torment instead of myself for the inability to get what I want. In my head, I start having dialogues with the repairman who called me and said, you know, we don't have that wire, that cable. You'll have to wait a couple of days. And every single time I need to do something with high-speed home internet, every time I will experience this same kind of interruption. What I need is not coming through the umbilical cord. I start to feel dissatisfied. A growing sense of unease and frustration settles over me, my desire pressing down and weighing on me more than before. And I end up sacrificing the technician who couldn't fix the problem right away, despite his best efforts. Dialogues and imagined conversations start running through my head, replaying what happened. Look, the lack of internet connectivity, with its frustrating silence and the absence of any online access, or even the missing and ever-elusive repairman who never seems to arrive, do not become obstacles or barriers for my inner world to turn against itself, to attack itself from within, regardless of what happens outside. That is, the repairman isn't doing anything to me, the internet isn't doing anything to me, but I keep interacting with them as if they were real characters, as if the pain I'm feeling The dissatisfaction I'm experiencing is because of them, because of them. These dialogues in my head that I have, these are truly the people sitting in this chair, the very ones I end up attacking for my own dissatisfaction. Let's imagine that I had a fight with my spouse. We argued about where to go on vacation. And I start having conversations with him in my head. In reality, I'm angry at him. I have a huge amount of anger because he doesn't want to do things the way I want. What I need doesn't want to come through this umbilical cord. And I can't integrate this huge amount of anger within myself to realize that I have a lot of dissatisfaction with this anger, and in my head I play out a scene where he is the one attacking me, forcing me to do things his way, and I'm just defending myself from him. That is, in this chair, I will put, for example, the particular object or item that I can scold and beat up instead of myself, especially when I feel upset or frustrated. So if I remove this husband from my internal dialogue and the husband is gone, he left a long time ago, I'm alone in the apartment. It turns out that I have to attack myself, the one who can't arrange a vacation trip to the place I want to go. It's your fault that your husband doesn't want to go where you want to go. In other words, I can't avoid punishing myself. I can't help but react with dissatisfaction, anger, and hatred. It's as if I have only two options left in this chair of torment. Either I sit in it, or the character I've appointed does. My parents could be sitting in this chair, but they're not to blame for my blocked initiative, for the fact that I don't earn money, or that I have no talents. My friend could be sitting in this chair, the one who didn't behave the way I needed her to, and I have an enormous amount of anger, but I can't legitimize this anger. So in my fantasies, it's she who attacks me, and I'm only defending myself from her. My audience, who will be present at a future lecture, could very well be sitting in this very chair, and they might attack me simply by not being particularly impressed with me at all. In reality, it's me demanding this of myself. It's my own desire insisting that I must be magnificent. But in order to somehow diffuse this situation inside myself, I introduce an additional character whom I seat in the empty chair, and I start as if comparing myself to them, trying to figure out what they want from me. It's this person who might attack me in the future. It's as if I want to anticipate this. So you see, His Majesty I wants things to go the way I need them to. Make it so that people admire me at the lecture. Make it so that there's internet right now. Make it so that my husband goes where I want him to. Make it so that my friend always bats her eyelashes admiringly and agrees with everything you say. I have my own wants, but without realizing them, I only feel this pressure, and I might throw someone else to the wolves for the sake of my own desires. People who have dialogues in their heads, if you tell them they're full of anger, they won't agree. They'll say, no, I talk in my head because I imagine how someone attacked me and how I respond to them. So you see, this external figure appears at the moment when I can't claim something as my own. For example, my own anger, or my desire for admiration, or my wish that others always agree with me in everything. I want the internet. I want a technician who will fix it right now. And the further this I want goes, the less aware a person is of it, the scarier it is for them to admit it. People are afraid to admit that they want admiration. They're afraid to admit that they want everyone to be happy to see them. They're afraid to admit that they want others to agree with them. They're afraid to admit that they want things to always go their way. just as they wish. And the mind begins taking into account that all of this is forbidden to know about oneself. I'm not allowed to know that I'm aggressive, not allowed to know that I want admiration, to twist things around and come up with some kind of explanatory construct, some kind of story that can finally somehow accommodate all of this, all these inconsistencies. So basically, if I get upset with the technician who is assigned to my case, who will only be able to install the cable for me in 2 days, it seems that I need to manage my own strong desire to have internet access right now. If I remove the technician, if I take away the dissatisfaction and suffering from the situation, I'm left only with my own problem, which, due to some objective circumstances, simply can't be solved at the moment. You see? When we deprive ourselves of dissatisfaction and suffering, it's as if we lose our own sense of importance. After all, it's pleasant to be dissatisfied, because when we're dissatisfied with someone, we're definitely better than they are, as if we've never been those technicians who need 2 days to find the cables. Or as if we've never been that internet connection that crashes, periodically falling into depression and losing functionality. At that moment, we seem better to ourselves. And if we suffer because there's no internet, then I'm definitely not to blame for not paying attention to the fact that there were constant problems with it. But I believed in a miracle, believed it would fix itself, and did nothing. People are very afraid to let go of their dissatisfaction with others because then they're left face to face with their own aggression, and then the only one they can torment is themselves. People are afraid not to be dissatisfied with others, not to have the opportunity to devalue them, not to have the chance to assign responsibility, because then to torment. They can't stop tormenting. They can't stop. And then the only one left to be torn apart is me. In other words, I can no longer put anyone else in that chair. I'll have to sit in it myself all the time and attack myself. In fact, a person with depression is someone who can't feed anyone else to their desires, but can only put themselves there, and they've tormented themselves so much that they no longer want to live. It's the inability to endure one's own torment, one's own desires, one's own idealistic notions of how the world should be. So, in fact, we need to move into our desires. We need to start questioning our own wants. But that's another story. How to question your own desires. There have already been videos about that. So, let's try to write in the comments or in your notebooks about a situation where you suffered because of something or were dissatisfied with someone. And try to take away your suffering and dissatisfaction yourself. What will you be left with? Suffering and dissatisfaction are very dangerous because a person locks themselves inside their own world, generating these inner dialogues, wasting energy, dropping out of reality, and becoming unable to do anything. But it seems to them that they're doing something, because inside they have a rich inner life, while on the outside nothing is happening. But there's no understanding. This is outside, this is inside. There is no master outside, only inside. I wind myself up from within. See you next time.